Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. Every once in a while in this podcast, as I go along, I get into a really good conversation with somebody who is maybe taking issue, arguing with me, having a different viewpoint over what it is that I am sharing. And today in 2 Kings 12 through 15 is going to be a really good opportunity to break down what an opposing view that somebody gave me. I have attacked this project with the idea that I'm reading the Bible with an eye towards how is it instructing us as a health manual, health for our body, mind, soul, spirit. And you can't get into that without addressing the notion that, pondering, is illness the result of sin? And I think so far I have laid out the idea that illness comes as we step off of God's path, as we go our own way. And that is something that as I keep reading, there's going to be more and more. It's a theory. It's how science used to be done. You put out a theory and then you try to disprove it. You look for evidence. You look at counter evidence. You look to see if you're wrong, but you do it with an idea that you could be wrong. You're looking for what the evidence shows. And here in 2 Kings 13, it's a good challenge to this idea of sin being how illness and sickness arises in the body. I think there's a lot of good support in the Old Testament so far that suggests that following God's commandments, following all of His stipulations, all of His rules, is how we keep our body healthy. But here we have Elisha. Elisha is at the end of his life, and he becomes sick. So when I put out a podcast with the title that it was something like, is illness, can you become sick by sinning? And one of the people that started a contrary conversation with me brought up Elisha and the fact that Elisha became sick and died. And their statement was that Elisha never sinned. He was a holy man, and therefore Elisha was evidence that my theory is incorrect. So I want to dive into this a little bit deeper. First, I think the wording here really matters. It said that Elisha had become ill with the illness that would eventually kill him. It doesn't say he becomes ill with a terminal disease. It doesn't say he becomes ill with leprosy or diabetes or cancer. This isn't a degenerative disease specifically that's mentioned here. It simply says he becomes ill with the illness that carries him away. And I think this is really important as we sort of suss out. It's dangerous. It can be a really dangerous statement to say that, a child who has cancer brought it on themselves because they sinned. It can be very hateful and I think a misinterpretation of what God is saying about illness and the body to suggest that there is blame in somebody who has innocently absorbed the sins of those that came before them. or have innocently absorbed illness because of something that man has done around them, environmental toxicity, choices that were made that that they didn't have control over. So there's a lot of dimension here, and it's, if I'm going to be fair, I have to look at all of it, and I have to wade into all of the sensitive areas. I think it's so important that it doesn't say Elisha became ill, he fell ill and could not be healed, or could not be, he was struck down. We hear illnesses where God strikes people down. Accidents happen. We just came through a reading where a king fell through his lattice and got ill and was seeking for a prophet to tell him whether he would survive or not. Accidents happen in the Bible, and whether or not they were sinners or not, that's a whole other matter. But I think we all know somebody who becomes elderly, and the common cold is a great example here. The common cold is not a degenerative disease. It is not something that it comes and stays for a long period. It absolutely comes because we have weakened our bodies. We talk about cold and flu season as if it's an inevitability, but really more and more people are coming to understand that cold and flu season happen as the seasons shift. Our body is weakened through the time difference and the cold that's coming, and usually it's weakened on top of what we can't control in our environment with what we could control, and that would be the food that we're eating at the time of the year. Lots of processed foods, lots of fake sugars and dyes and all kinds of harmful things that the body is now struggling with. That would be sinful. It would be fake creation that is being consumed, causing that cold. In the average person, a cold is visited upon somebody who's making poor decisions. Maybe they're not sleeping well because there are deadlines at work before the holidays. As I mentioned, the darkness and the cold, and they're eating improperly because they're under stress. They get a cold. It visits upon them. Somebody who understands why they're getting ill might correct and get back onto the correct path, get back onto God's path and eat proper food and follow his rules and suggestions for care and feeding of the human body, and become healed, become strong enough that they crowd out the organism that is out competing, that is growing inappropriately in the body. So sin, and when we think about that, is something, we think about that like, oh, you broke one of the 10 commandments, you murdered somebody, or you slept with somebody's wife. Sin is just at its foundation going your own way, taking your own counsel, thinking you are wiser than the design that you were given. And I think that it would be so crazy to think that Elisha, even though he has been visited upon, he has indwelt with the Holy Spirit, and he is doing amazing works, and he's capable of performing miracles. Just because he's able to do that doesn't mean that he isn't human. He's still human. He's still open to the possibility of choosing to perhaps stay up too late or push himself too far in old age, and not take into account his coming frailty, or that things need to slow down, perhaps not eating appropriately. And in what I'm putting forth in this theory, that would be sin. It's sin because it is going against the body's design, and it's taking for granted God's ability to keep us in balance if we're following those rules and stepping outside. Elisha could very well have come down with something as simple as the common cold. We know that the common cold for somebody that is very strong and healthy is going to come. It's going to put you in bed. You're going to cough. You're going to sneeze. And then on the other side of it, you're going to be fine. But that's not the case for somebody who's very elderly and weakened. And no matter what we do in God's rules for our body, there will come a point where our bodies become frail. That is the design. So to suggest that Elisha is above becoming ill because he is a holy man, I think is unfair. And in fact, I think it's more encouraging to look at Elisha here and say, yeah, it's totally possible to become ill even while spending 98% of your time focused on following God's will for the body. It's encouraging to see that somebody that is really doing everything right and is kind of difficult to conceive as a quote-unquote sinner can become ill as well. I think it's an important object lesson. In a time when those who are trying to be more healthy, if they get ill, are often pilloried in the town square because, see, everything that you're doing doesn't really matter because you're sick just like everybody else. Yeah, we all are able to fall prey to going our own way from time to time. And we may get away with it sometimes. We may not be visited upon us with an illness. We might just squeak by and stay in balance, but the next time we might not be so lucky. Elisha becoming ill with the illness that would eventually kill him means that it's an illness that visited upon him that perhaps wasn't so very serious, but it became serious because of the time of life that he was in. We will all be carried away by something or another. The idea that you would be carried away by an illness and then by what I'm proposing, that means that you sinned against God and you were willful is problematic. I think we have to be careful about how we understand the framework I'm trying to build and what I think I see supported here in the Bible. No matter what, we are humans, and we will not seek after God's heart 100% of the time. It's just not possible. Look at David. David was a mess, and he was described as seeking after God's heart and was the founder of a dynasty that would bring us the Savior of all. David was a mess. He still was held up in our history, in Christian history. Elisha is held up. I don't think to put him in this framework and question why he was sick at the end of his life, I think we can do that without ascribing some sort of evil to him. And I think in the same way, we can look at those who are innocently ill because of what their father, their mother, their grandmother chose to do, or the environment around them that is a fallen world has done. I think we can look at those people inside this framework of a Bible that gives us these perfect instructions and still not ascribe evil. So, ponder that. Hop onto the social media posts or drop me a line and let's argue some more. Let's talk about it. Bring me more evidence. Theory is only as good as its ability to stand up against criticism. So let's do it. Let's see. Let's see if the Bible really is a manual for our overall health. I pray that God is blessing you today, and I will see you next time. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.